Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar on Unpacking Cancer from the Backpack, bringing your child's school into the conversation. We're just going to give folks another minute to trickle in, and then we'll get started. We want to thank our sponsor for today and welcome you all to this webinar. I'm going to go over a little bit about our programs and upcoming webinars, talk about how to engage in today's webinar, and also talk about the importance of the survey at the end. For those of you who are new to Bright Spot Network, we are a community of parents who have cancer who are diagnosed during pregnancy or with young children who live anywhere in the United States, and we also serve partners. So our community of parents include every cancer diagnosis, every stage. We serve not only the patient, but partners and children, building a sense of community and normalcy and resources for parents to use with their children. We have a wealth of different programs and resources that include free books for parents and kids about cancer, big feelings, grief, and loss. We provide a free art box as a point of connection between parent and child. We offer financial grants, virtual support groups for parents and partners, different connections for kids, whether that be live on Zoom or remotely through different exchange programs. We offer webinars such as today's and different wellness workshops, family resource navigation to connect parents to resources that they need, and a wealth of web resources that you can find on our website that are all free and downloadable. Again, all of our programs are free of charge and open to any family living in the United States. We want to promote a couple of upcoming webinars in November to celebrate caregivers. We have Cancer Care presenting on navigating caregiving for adult children with cancer as an older adult. So really that's for grandparents really who are looking to learn more information about how to support their adult children who are going through cancer. And in December, we are partnering with Dougie's Center to present on anticipatory grief. And this is a really great opportunity. It's really kind of a big Q&A session. So when you sign up, you can enter your questions or just come with your own, and we will dialogue with one of their clinicians about how to prepare children and the family for an impending death. You are free to type in your questions into the Q&A throughout the webinar. Know that if you want to keep your question anonymous, there is a box that you can check that's send anonymously. We will hold all questions till the end, but I encourage you to still type in your question as you have it, just so you don't forget it. We'll have someone holding them for the end. We will be dropping a link, a survey link into the chat near the end. We'll also send the link in the follow-up email. And we really do appreciate you completing the survey because this information is really valuable to know about what information is helpful, what's not, and future topics that you would like to know more about. Also, just a reminder that we are recording today's webinar, and we will be sending the recording in a follow-up email for folks who missed it, and it will live on our website very soon. So again, if you miss out on some of this, if you have to step away or there was something you didn't remember, or if you simply want to share this with someone else that didn't attend, you'll be able to share that link with other people. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Carissa Hodgson. I'm the Director of Programs and Community Outreach at Bright Spot Network. In addition to my work here, I have been the Program Manager at Gilda's Club Madison, and together have been serving families facing cancer for about 15 years. I come to this work as an adult child, having lost two dads to cancer, so this work is just very near and dear to my heart. I sit as the co-chair of the Youth, Families, and Cancer Special Interest Group with the Association of Oncology Social Work, and I'm also a long-term instructor at the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work. Right. Just for folks who do appreciate um, video, going to go ahead and come on here. All right. The agenda for today is to first sort of talk about the three pillars of what kids need when a parent has cancer. Those are sort of a part of all of my presentations, and we will overlay how that relates to talking to our kids' schools. I also am a parent. I have a kiddo that I just sent off to fourth grade. So I am also in sort of the back to school mindset. I want to go through some of the concerns that parents have about whether or not to disclose to school about their cancer diagnosis or about how much information to share, how to communicate with schools, the support resources that you will find at schools, and then kind of bring it back to the individual kids and look at some signs of distress and how to connect them with support, some tools to help kids cope with very common responses, and how to maintain balance at home. Now, this presentation it has drawn sort of a diversity of folks. So, of course, a lot of our attendees today are parents with cancer, or your partner has cancer and you have kids. But I know that we also have teachers, coaches, social workers, guidance counselors, a whole bunch of people on this webinar. So hopefully, no matter what your lens is, you'll find some really great nuggets. But just for the ease of communication here, I'm going to be speaking to parents who have a cancer diagnosis. So, what do kids need when a parent or a loved one has cancer? They need safe, reliable, and compassionate caregivers. We know that schools are an incredible community that include teachers, social workers, counselors, nurses, and they are incredible caregivers for your children when they're at school, and they really care about your kid. We know that kids need consistent routines and structure. How wonderful are schools, and this includes daycares, preschools, at providing normalcy for kids. They just automatically create schedule, activities, and socialization, which is really important. All of this is very valuable for kids' development and their overall wellness. We also know that kids need open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication. Kids benefit from having at least one trusted adult that they can go to while they're at school who can listen and provide honest guidance. So I think these are really three foundational reasons why you might want to consider talking to your child's school about your cancer. Now, I also know there's some really legitimate concerns parents have about why they don't want to disclose their cancer diagnosis. Some common phrases I've heard. What if adults or other kids treat my kid differently, right? I hear parents tell me all the time, I don't want people to pity my kid. I don't want them to patronize my kid. I don't want them constantly asking my kid, how's your mom doing? How are you doing today? Because I want my kid to go to school and I want it to be a respite from cancer. So that's a pretty legitimate concern. Staff may share information I don't want my kid to know. Again, that's very legitimate. You might have a very specific message you're telling your kid, especially young children. You know, if they're 3, 4, preschool age, and you're giving them just very basic information, you don't want more detailed information perhaps coming back to your child that might scare them or worry them. I'm a private person. I don't want everyone knowing my business. Yeah, I totally get that. I can be pretty private myself. You might not want some really intimate information getting out into the community. You don't want people asking you and knowing information that feels very private. Now, on the other hand, I have parents tell me, I don't want my kid to feel like they're keeping a secret. I might be a very private person, and in my adult world, I'm not really telling many people, but my kid knows I have cancer. And if I'm telling them, don't tell your teachers, don't talk to your friends about it, that doesn't feel fair to them. Like they deserve to have a space to talk about it. What if my kid has questions and needs someone to talk to while they're at school? It's not like you send your kids off to school and say, okay, now between 8 and 2, don't think about cancer, don't have big feelings. Obviously, that doesn't work. So it's nice to know that you have some people on the inside who can be supportive while your kid is at school. And then lastly, parents say, I want my kid to experience receiving support from other adults and peers. That's one of the silver linings that a lot of parents, experience is they get to ask people for help and have people help them and check in with them and share love and gifts and do things for them. And kids really benefit from that as well, to see what it's like to go through a hard experience and to have friends care about them and share positive words that can be really special to kids. So, why would you want to involve your child's school? We've already basically talked about this, but number one, I think this is maybe the most important. Like, schools are a community and it's full of really loving, caring adults who want to help your child. Most people that work at a school are there because they love kids and they want to help. And why not tap into that beautiful community of support, not only for your kid to have that support, but your whole family. It might be helpful to your to all your kids, to your partner, to yourself. It can be sort of this really supportive, loving community. Schools have resources to support your child and may be able to connect your family with additional resources in the community, which might include other families. So you might be aware of the many layers of services your child's school provides, but you might not. And so many schools, I mean, they offer incredible services that a lot of us have not even tapped into. So whether it's for your kid while they're at school, being able to access some counseling or an IEP after school care, it might be family services, it might be connections to transportation services or community therapists, or other ways to help your child. So being able to by disclosing the cancer diagnosis, you kind of like get these inroads to all of these amazing services that can help not only your child but the whole family. Your child may act differently at school. And I mean, a lot of parents know this, right? But I think we can be surprised that they might seem to be processing information one way at home, but then very different at school. And how valuable for you to know that. Like, you'd like to know what kind of behaviors are going on, so that you can help your child to cope. And it's kind of only fair to the teachers and to your child for them to know, because if all of a sudden your child is being really disruptive, a lot of teachers might see that as as a problem and come at it from more of like a disciplinary lens, where if they know that it's because your child is really juggling a lot, they can be much more loving and compassionate. And that seems only kind, not only to your child but to the teacher, to kind of have the full story. And similar to that, not only will, teachers and school staff be able to offer more compassion to your child, it can be to you as well. Because especially if you have young children, and you're late for drop off, or you forgot to sign the reading log, you might be, getting all these emails like, why were you late? And we need this and we need a meeting, because the teachers or staff are kind of like, what's up? And if you're able to disclose that, listen, you're juggling a lot and you could really, you'd appreciate a little bit of flexibility, or is there a way that they could support you? You'll probably get it. You need to be able to be honest in order to get that support. If you find that you're still feeling reluctant about talking to your child's school, I would encourage you to just think about what is causing that reluctance. What is the barrier? It's probably some need that you have that you feel, um, you're not getting. So I would encourage you to talk to partner, family, friends, social worker, therapist about what that is, and figure out, is it a legitimate concern? Like, maybe you're really onto something, and for your specific circumstance, it might not make sense to disclose or talk to your school. But is there a way that perhaps you can compromise and still share a tiny bit of information that would be helpful to your child without maybe disclosing everything? Because again, this isn't like an all or nothing situation. There's definitely a way to share a little bit without all of the details. You get to set the expectations and boundaries here, and we'll talk more about that in a few slides. Consider that there also might be other families that are going through a cancer diagnosis or a chronic illness. You're probably not the first family at the school to be going through something like this. So realize that these, teachers and school staff probably have some expertise that can help your situation. They can give you some information about child development and some helpful coping tools and other resources that would really help you out at home. And you sort of working with the school in collaboration, working together, only helps then future families who really need to have that inroad paved. So there is that idea that you're just kind of helping to create future support for future families. So when you're ready to communicate with schools, I would suggest first, if you have older children in particular, having a conversation with them to talk about what they feel comfortable with their teachers and other people at school knowing, who they want to be told, adults there that maybe they don't want to be told. They'll probably have some insight into who they trust and who they don't. And maybe they want to be the ones having conversations, especially if you have a teenager. They probably want the agency to be able to control that message. At that point, it's kind of their story to tell. But this might include some disagreements, some compromises, especially again, like with high schoolers. But it's an important conversation to have. And even if you have young kids, I would very much encourage you after you've talked to certain teachers to circle back. So close that circle to let them know, I just wanted you to know I talked to Miss Regina. I told her that I have cancer. So that way you can feel safe if you ever have questions or want to talk to her. She knows, and you should feel safe to talk to her. You want your kids to know sort of who's been informed and who they can talk to. I would consider identifying a key contact because if all of a sudden you feel like you have 10 people at the school that you're constantly needing to update, that's just adding an extra layer of time and energy and commitment that you probably don't have. So, ideally, just kind of identify one person that you can say, I'm going to send you the updates. And then if you could pass that on to X, Y, and Z, that would be great. So, like all communication can just go through like one single contact. Perhaps the person that you feel the closest with, that you trust. It might be the teacher because that's who sees your child the most. But maybe it's the school nurse. Maybe it's someone that you have, again, like a prior relationship with and you just really trust them. Make a plan for how the school should communicate with you. So it's one thing for you to be communicating with them information, but of course you want to know, like, will you please be letting me know? Maybe that's a weekly check-in email or a phone call. And what's the best way? Maybe like a group text with you and your partner so that everyone's on the same page. Maybe that's the best. So figure out the flow of communication because it's not one direction, it's both. You really want to be communicating with each other about how your kiddos are doing and information really you all should know. You definitely want to update contacts to reflect your child's care team because if you're going through treatment or you're going to be at an extended stay at a hospital, you might have brought in grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, neighbors that are part of your care team. And if any of them will be picking your child up from daycare, from school, this is really important for, of course, our young kiddos. The school needs to know that because we know that in this day and age in particular, like that all needs to be sort of pre-approved and we want to make sure the school knows this, that you approve of that, that they have the contact information, and it's all squared away. So it's just not one thing you have to worry about. And then lastly, be very clear about the information that you want to be shared and with whom. And that's where we kind of get to managing your message. And I have found that this tends to be the sticking point for a lot of parents. This is where a lot of parents get held up, where they say, I really want to control the information. And therefore, I'm so worried about what might happen to this information that I'm just not telling them at all. And I understand that. And there might be some really good reasons as to why a parent wants to control the message. Sometimes it's just because we're control freaks, and I get that. But it might be because there's a really serious situation, something very nuanced. And I get that each family has to figure this out and do what makes the most sense for them. So, some ideas and questions to consider before you have the conversation. You might want to be talking to your key contact about the information your child knows and what they don't know. So, for instance, I know I've worked with a lot of families that have younger children, maybe they're in preschool, like, 3, 4, and a parent has an advanced diagnosis and they say, we've told our daughter that I have cancer, but we haven't given her the details. She doesn't know that I have stage 4. We are not talking about death and dying. We're just not even there. So that might be helpful for you to know. Like, I want you to know my prognosis, but that is not for my daughter to know. That might be something you want to make very, very clear, right? You might want to talk about how you would like the staff at school to respond to your child's questions. So I know that there are some parents that really truly want to be the person that's answering your child's questions. So you might be telling the staff, "Hey, like it's great if my son has questions. I like them to know that you're a safe person. But if you could just have them come have them come to me, I want to be the one to answer those questions." So you can still support them by listening and validating their feelings and saying, "Yeah, those are all good questions. Maybe let's make a question list for you to take home to mom and dad, and you guys can talk about it when you get home." Great. But if that's important to you, make sure you're telling them this. Again, you're setting sort of the boundaries and expectations. You want to let this key contact know what information can be shared with other staff. You might be telling them, like, listen, I really trust you, and I feel safe that you're going to keep my information confidential and private. So I'm going to tell you a lot, but I only want you to pass along this information. Again, be very clear about what information the other staff can know and what information is okay for other kids to know, because there might be classes that want to do a little bit of cancer education, or if kids find out that they have questions. So like, what information is okay for a teacher to share with the rest of the class, and what really just needs to stay within the adults. There is just a wealth of resources at school. So we've sort of touched on this, but of course, student services, we have amazing social workers, guidance counselors, psychologists, nurses, and your child might be all of a sudden, frequently visiting these people all of the time. So definitely you want to make friends with these folks. Maybe your kid has never visited the school nurse, but they all of a sudden are very anxious and they get tummy aches and headaches. You want the school nurse to know that your child is anxious because of your cancer diagnosis, and that will help them to support your child, and they won't have all these questions about why all of a sudden is Samantha coming to me every day with a tummy ache. That's concerning. At least they'll know, and not to mean that they won't discount that symptom, but it'll help guide them. It might be that with access to the counselor, that your child can have some brief counseling, or just know there's a safe place to go when they have big feelings or questions. Your school might offer a support group. I do know some schools that probably wouldn't be specific to for kids who have a parent with cancer, but it might be kids who are going through big changes. So they're in a peer support group with kids who have parents going through a divorce, or kids who have just moved, or a parent in the military, and the school social worker is helping the kids to learn coping skills to deal with changes. Fantastic. It'd be great to maybe have your kid be a part of that group if they're already at school. What a great opportunity. It might be that if you had a kiddo, especially again, I know we have a lot of worriers, if all of a sudden their worry is just intense and it's become pretty, like they've become anxious children, and they might need that extra support of an individualized education plan to give them that, again, just that layer of protection if they're not able to study the way they used to study or keep up with their work. They might have a real reason why they need that extra layer of protection. So talk to your school about that. It may be that you, as the parent, want to go in and talk to a kid's class, read a book, answer their questions about cancer, or maybe someone else goes into class to do that. Or some schools like to do a staff in service about, especially if all of a sudden they see an influx of a lot of parents and grandparents with cancer. They're like, hey, let's learn more about how to support our students. Great. That's a wonderful resource that can happen at your kid's school. Informally, there is a lot that can happen between a teacher and a student that helps them to feel seen and heard and validated. It may be that a kiddo comes up with like a subtle sign. So it's kind of like a sign going, I'm here, but I'm really struggling. Please don't call on me to read out loud or to answer any questions. Like, please just kind of let me be quiet. And the teacher can respect that and be like, okay, I see that they just need to be quiet. Or a sign that's like, I really need to go to the guidance counselor. I'm really struggling. Great. I think it's really helpful for some teachers to have that kind of relationship and communication with students, just again to help them feel like they're watching out for them. A lot of schools do like lunch groups or mentors, school buddies. Those are wonderful ways for your kid to get a little extra support, especially with their peers and friends. It might be that the school knows of other families that are either going through a cancer diagnosis or other chronic illness, and they can connect you guys. And what's wonderful is that is like another local family who can understand, and you can get together at the park and the kids can play and you can talk to other parents. And it's just this really wonderful connection to help you feel a sense of community. They might be able to refer you to other community resources, like I said before, like if you're looking for therapy or transportation or after school support. Schools sometimes like to raise awareness. I see this a lot, especially in like middle school, high school. If they're seeing, a lot of parents with cancer, maybe the kids get really excited to raise awareness about cancer screening and early detection. And maybe they're doing some research about it and putting up posters, or maybe they're doing fundraising to raise money for the American Cancer Society, or maybe they're doing a GoFundMe. Small school districts and do this all the time for families that maybe want to help raise money for a family. So a lot of these resources are available in this community of school. Live Strong offers fantastic curriculum. I really love what they offer, and you can go onto their website. It's all free and downloadable, and they break it down by grades. So if you're working in a school and you want some information, like worksheets and things like that, I would strongly encourage you to go check that out. For younger kids, there is this really great Arthur video about the lunch lady, Ms. McGrady, getting cancer that can be really helpful about how to support someone at school, especially like a teacher or support staff with cancer. And then, of course, books, like bringing in books to read to kids about what is cancer and the different words about cancer can be really helpful. And again, these are all things like if you're a teacher or school staff, if you're thinking about doing this, make sure that it's okay with the kid and the parent to be doing this in a classroom setting, because even like if it's okay with the parent, a lot of times I have kids going, I don't want to be showcased like that. Like, please don't highlight that my mom has cancer. Or on the flip side, you have kids being like, yes, I want to talk about it. I want my other friends to know what I'm going through. So as always, just make sure everyone is on the same page, and that always includes the kid, even if they're young, if like they're 3 or 4, they still have a voice and a say in how it's talked about in a classroom setting. Certainly, parents want to be attentive to any signs of distress. I always tell parents that you are the expert in your kiddos. So you know when it's not just a funk, right? Like all kids go through funks and it's transitory. But if it's persisting and it seems bothersome, then it seems like your kid probably needs extra support. If your kid doesn't seem like they're able to really function anymore, that means they need some support. Disturbances in the big four. So, young children, they were totally potty trained and all of a sudden they're having a lot of accidents. That might be a signal. School, they used to do really well in school and enjoy going to school, but now they're really struggling and can't keep up. That could be a sign of extra stress. They're eating or sleeping too much or too little, also might be a signal that they need some extra support. It's never a bad idea to get your kids connected to a therapist or to someone that can just help support them. And that can look very different. We have therapists that do that work through play, through art. We have child life services, um, all different kinds of ways that kids can connect with therapy. Because I think a lot of adults are still thinking about like adult talk therapy face to face. Of course, for kids, that usually isn't the best way. But there's so many therapists that are gifted at really working with kids of all ages. And so ideally, you're looking for a therapist that has an experience working with kids and working with a family member who has cancer or a chronic illness. Another thing we want to look out for are dysfunctional role shifts. And by that, I mean a kiddo who all of a sudden feels like they need to be your caregiver and they're focusing more on being your caregiver than being with friends or going to do their after school activities. That might be a concern. Or if they're forgetting to do all those other things because they feel like they need to stay home and be surrogate parent to their younger siblings. There's a difference, and it can be a fine line between being helpful and feeling obligated to do those things. So of course it's lovely to have our kids help out, but we want to keep that appropriate, developmentally appropriate. Otherwise, we also need them to just be a kid and to go do what they need to do. Some very common responses when a parent has cancer and you enter school, separation anxiety. And your kiddo may already be struggling with this. I mean, my goodness, daycare, preschool, those first, couple years, kindergarten, first grade. I remember this was hard for my kiddo. And we weren't dealing with a parent's cancer. So we're really gonna like turn that up if a kid was already struggling and now they're worried because mom or dad has cancer. A huge fan of books. There's so many great books that reinforce that enduring, connection and relationship, even when you're physically not present. So I recommend going to a library, checking out these books, reading them over and over with your kiddo, developing a goodbye ritual, something that's short and sweet that your kid just kind of knows. It's like that grounding element of okay, I'm at daycare. Dad is saying maybe this favorite line from a song, or doing the special handshake, and then they're gonna leave, but I know he'll be back. That can be really helpful for kids. It might also be helpful for them to have a physical sort of representation of like a touchstone. Maybe it's an actual pebble, maybe it's something made out of clay, something that is small and easily replaceable because kids will lose it. And something they can just keep in their pocket and sort of touch and hold if they're feeling sad or wanting to feel that connection. You can have like a really fun ritual of, pouring your love into this pebble or kissing the pebble. It's like, dad's love is in this pebble and you keep it and you hold it and feel it when I'm not with you. We know that there are going to be big feelings. Of course there are. And so many amazing books. I mean, more and more are coming out. I'm a huge fan of so many of these great feelings books. And as parents, this is something we should be helping our kids with, regardless of cancer, is helping to identify and name feelings and what the function of each feeling is. That body awareness of like where we feel the feeling, what we can do with it. And something that can be really helpful is for parents to narrate sort of their inner dialogue or inner process. So, get off the phone. You had a really bad phone call. And, oh, that was so frustrating. I'm so mad right now. And my fists are on fire. I'm so mad. I need to go to my bedroom right now and just like punch the pillows, take a few deep breaths. You go do that. You come out, say, okay, I feel better. That was really helpful. I feel like now maybe I'm in my right mind to think about how I want to problem solve that. Kids may or may not be watching or listening, but they are in some level. They're really picking up, they're kind of like listening and watching how you're processing, the words you're using, the script, what you're doing with your feelings. And that gives them a roadmap of what they can do when they're starting to feel all those big feelings. So, highly encourage you editorializing and narrating your inner process. You may or may not have had a worrier before cancer. A lot of kids are going to become worriers when there's a parent with cancer, and it makes total sense. There are a lot of fears, there's a lot of questions. Again, amazing books that can help your kids to understand worries and the purpose of fear. It means that you want to pay attention to something. But of course, we can't pay attention to something all day long, all the time. That's going to drain all of our energy, and that's not fair. So, how can we pay attention to something, but just then sort of calm down our body? And it might be helping them to come up with mantras that they can say to then help them to push back some worries so that it's not in the front of their minds, practicing some element of mindfulness, try out a few different, practices, try out different breathing techniques or try out yoga, stretching, guided visualizations. Whatever will work for your kid, great, especially if it's something really short and easy that they can do in the middle of class that no one notices, right? So that's a tool that they can use. A really helpful tool that I've used with kids is a container visualization, which basically helps them to learn how to compartmentalize, which is a skill all of us can use. And so, really, what you do is you help your kid to just visualize a container, and they can have a lot of fun with this. Maybe it's an Easter egg, maybe it's a treasure box, maybe it's a jar. And they just sort of prompt them through putting each worry that they have into this container and then tell them to put that container as far away, visualize putting it as far away as they need to, where it's safe, that they're not going to be thinking about it, but they can go back and open it up if they want to deal with the problem later. So it might be that they're just visualizing burying it in the backyard, or maybe they're putting it in a rocket ship and sending it off to Mars. I mean, however far it needs to go. And then just keep prompting them. What's another worry you have? What's another worry that's bothering you? And go through and put all these in containers until they say that they don't have any more worries. At the beginning, this might take 20 minutes. They might have a lot of worries. Hopefully, this gets to the point where they can just do it more frequently and do it even in the middle of class if they need to. With young kids, maybe it's something you do before bedtime, or maybe it's a practice where you set the alarm for 15 minutes earlier and do it before you send them off to school. Figure out what works for your kid and your family. We also have a lot of kids that are going to worry about how to respond to people when they're not at home. Like how to respond to the teacher that's constantly asking me, "How's your mom? How's your mom?" What I do when my friends ask me about what's up with you and why, what about the people that come up to me and say, "Why is your mom bald?" Kids are going to have a lot of anxiety about this, some kids, and they might want to role play how to respond. You might want to help them to make a plan or just have some go to responses because oftentimes kids just want to deflect and let them know that's okay to have those go to responses of, "Oh, you know what? I'm late for class. I gotta go." Or, "Ooh, I'm in the middle of this. Talk to you later." It's okay. It's okay to deflect and move on. That might be really helpful for them to just kind of keep school normal and safe. And remind them that if they're having problems with people asking them too many questions, say, "You can always let me know if there's something I can do to help, or if I can talk to your teacher or talk to your school. Maybe, I can be the one to answer some of those questions." That might be your cue to then go in and have a presentation at the class to answer all the questions in a group setting so that your kiddo doesn't have to do it. We also, of course, want to maintain some balance at home. Um, Now, a lot of kids use their after school, extracurricular activities as a source of support. That is like their sense of normalcy. That's where they have their friends, their exercise. So, as much as possible, we want to be able to keep that routine. If that is something that brings them joy and happiness, support, regulation, let's keep that. But if you feel like your kid is just too involved with too many things, this might be a time to sort of scale back because we definitely want kids to have some downtime. Young kids in particular need unscheduled free time for them to play. That is how they're going to process through the day and pull it apart, all the things that they experience, the questions, the feelings. They're going to sort of play it out, and we want them to have that. Older kids are also gonna need sort of whatever that downtime looks like. It might be as they get older, actually more time with friends. Middle schoolers, high schoolers, their peer group becomes their number one support system. So we want them to have time, whether it's physically being with them, texting, video chatting, maybe it's that they're playing video games while they're talking, whatever it is, we want them to have that time. We also want to create some touch points. Now, for young kids, that's literal touch points like snuggle times. Maybe it's like true just on the couch snuggles. Maybe it's cuddle up reading a book, doing little massages. They're going to need that. And they need that flow of oxytocin and that physical connection to know that, like, you're there. And doesn't even need to be talking, it's just cuddles and touch. Now, that's going to become figurative as they get older. And it's really then more about time just to check in. So even if you have a high schooler who's driving and they're going between football practice and their job, you want to have some time built in to just check in. How's your day going? And time that you can give them information and updates. I had a scan today. It looks great. Treatment's working. I wanted you to know that. Hey, any new questions come up? Things happening about that? You want to be able to have that flow of communication. You might want to consider some new routines that just helps everyone in the family. Maybe this is that good excuse to start doing gratitudes at the dinner table or trying out yoga or type of meditation. Maybe you sort of institute after dinner walks together. It could be that, maybe your kid sees you journaling and they're like, "What are you doing?" Maybe you create a journal just for them. You get an old notebook and you decoupage it and you're like, "This is your special journal. Here are some fun prompts." And they can sort of learn a new creative expression through you, or vice versa. Maybe you want to take up a new creative art and your kid loves to paint. You're like, "Hey, would you teach me more about painting?" Kids love to be in the role of teacher and guider. So have them kind of show you their materials and what they do, and you can practice a new form together. I did say that, so this webinar is being recorded. It will be up on our website soon. We already have a nice video about talking to your kid's school that you can view on our website, as well as a free downloadable guide on our resource library. Please access those. These are all free, downloadable, and shareable. And I want to wrap up right now with a helpful quote from a doctor who had breast cancer and was a mom herself. And she says, the greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, loss, pain, or stress, but the confidence and tools to cope and grow with all that life has to offer them. And I think that's really meaningful here because, while of course I talk to so many parents and they say, I never, of course, asked for cancer. I'd like to have never had cancer. But having gone through it, I have found that we really, as a family, grew, and I gave my kids an opportunity to practice creative problem solving, and they got to sort of see the silver linings in things and practice maturity. And I just feel like, as a family, we're kind of better for it. And that's part of growth. And that's why our kids are going to school. We want them to grow, and to grow means to experience a little bit of stress and a little bit of discomfort. That's where the growth happens. And so by including our children's school and community in this life experience, it'll really help your children to be able to round out their overall wellness and growth and ability to experience resilience. I will get to some Q&A right now, but before I do that, just want to remind you that you can always reach out to us if you had specific questions about resources or other community opportunities, services, or if you want to talk specifically about your family, please reach out to us, and we'll put my email address in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share and see what we have for questions. Haley, would you mind letting me know if we have any questions?
Sorry. Yes, of course. We do have a question in the Q&A, which is that this parent has a big fundraiser at their school for somebody, for Terry Fox, who's a cancer activist who had died from cancer. And every year, the fundraising run brings up a lot of anxiety for their older kid who is almost 8. I think it's just for this parent saying it's just a reminder that people die from cancer. This parent is no evidence of disease and is doing well, but the kid is aware of what was going on through treatment and various surgeries and has a lot of worries. He's also aware that his grandmother, who he was close to, did die from cancer. I feel like I want to bring this up with the school, but I haven't yet because I'm not quite sure what to do. I'm not sure if there's anything that they can do. Maybe it's something more to address at home.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that question, because this is very, very important and something I didn't cover that I want to cover. So you're very right that there will always be issues and triggers that come up that really realistically you probably can't control, right? Because this fundraiser is a great event. And it's not like you want to say you can't have this event because it makes my kid worried. So what you can control is at home talking to your kiddo about what that feels like. And it is super common when other kids find out that, like, if a parent, grandparent, loved one has cancer, it is inevitable that especially young kids, they will run up and be like, oh my God, my grandpa had cancer and he died last year. My cat had leukemia, they died. Kids, they want to connect. It comes from this really beautiful place, but it's often they want to tell you all about the animal, the pet, the grandparent who died of cancer. And you're like, that's not helpful to my kid because, I'm doing well. It was caught early, and all it's doing is revving my kid up and making them more anxious. Again, it's not like you can go into the classroom and be like, all you other kids need to stop talking to my kid. But what you can do is talk with your kid at home and say, it is true that some people die of cancer, and a lot of these people, they were older people, and their cancer was more progressed or it was found later. I want you to know that, my cancer was found early, and the doctors are doing a great job at giving me the medicines I need, and I plan on living a long and healthy life. Now, you can't promise that you're never going to die because we're all going to die. I get that. But for young kids and worriers, you can focus on the present, which really is like, I'm doing okay. I can't hide the fact that yes, some people die, but their experience was very different. my experience is, I'm doing well, it's caught early, I'm going to be okay. And then teach your kid some of these coping skills about what to do with those fears as they come up. Because yes, you can sort of allay their fears a little bit and give them the education and constantly sort of check in with them, but they also need to sort of learn their own practices of what to do when they feel scared. And if you feel like they're still worrying, that's the perfect time to connect them with extra support. Help them to find an art therapist, a play therapist, someone that can help work with them one on one to really dig into those fears and learn more coping skills, someone that has an expertise with kids and worries.
This is a question that comes up a lot, that I hear a lot from parents is actually, if they have maybe lost their hair from chemotherapy, and there's kids at school that are being mean to their kid because of this new change in their parents' appearance, or perhaps it's like other assisted technology, stuff like that. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, and not necessarily, I mean, maybe we could call it bullies, but like, kids that are, not being kind to other kids, and, they're sort of making fun of, a parent.
hmm I have heard that too. And that is, my God, as a parent, I mean, that gets right to the heart, right? Like that hurts. It hurts to feel like your kid is being made fun of for something, for your cancer. It hurts. The first thing is really to just validate your kid's feelings and be like, oh my goodness, that must be so hard. That would make me really sad too. It's making me sad as your parent to hear that. I'm so sorry that's happening to you. So really be present with their feelings and help them through that. Um, might be that, especially with older kids, helping them to practice, responses that they might want to give to the other kids, whether that's leading from a place of vulnerability about like, well, that just makes me sad, or maybe it's an indifference. It kind of depends, right, on like that tone and how other kids are using it. And maybe it's that like just like your words have no power and just brush it off. And then even if you really do feel sad, go find someone to talk to about it. So there are many different ways that kids might want to use to respond to other kids, and you can help problem solve with them and role play. With younger kids who might not be able to do much of that, that might be a good time to go talk to a teacher or school, someone at the school, and just say, hey, I've learned these things are happening. And I realize that, like, ultimately, we can't really control a lot of this, but I want you to know it's happening. And so maybe there's something you can do to do, like, some education, maybe read a book, do something to sort of bring this to everyone's attention, just to sort of normalize. We want to normalize it because I think a lot of the meanness or poking fun, it's because like your parent's different. And if we talk about how that's actually a really normal part of cancer treatment, it takes some of the power away. So hopefully, there's something there that can help you feel like you can help your kiddo through that. Because I get it, that's really hard.
Okay, we have another question here. My daughter just turned 2 years old and she starts preschool in a couple of weeks. Is it too soon to bring up cancer to her school?
I don't think so. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter the age. I think because even if it's more about you, that you want the school to know I'm going through this. So again, like if I'm a little bit late for pickup, or if I'm not responding to an email, I just kind of want you to know that my family's going through that. Something I didn't specifically say in the presentation, I said it's not all or nothing. If you don't have to give the school all the nitty details. You don't even have to give them your cancer diagnosis. You can just say, I have cancer. It can be that short. And that will still allow them to have that basic information to go, oh, okay, this family is dealing with a lot. We can give them some grace and flexibility. And then even at 2, I mean, again, we know that even 2-year-olds are going to be processing this in their own way. Like they're picking up on changes at home, changes in routine, changes in caregivers. So they're still picking up on like there are a lot of changes happening. And now, especially if they're just starting school, like a daycare or preschool, that's another big change. And so we really do want, the school staff to know that so they can be letting us know of any concerns or behavioral changes, and sort of like vice versa. We're just kind of keeping everyone on the same page because ultimately as parents, I mean, that's what we want. We want our kids to thrive and do the best they can. And that means that everyone that's taking care of them, including, daycare, preschool, that they can be caregivers and supporting kids while they're not with you.
Thanks so much for that, Carissa. Um, I'm also wondering if you can talk a little bit to the kind of like, the really tangible ways. I mean, it's kind of sounds silly, but I know that when I was navigating my cancer and talking to my kids' preschool, I there was like this barrier that was like actually just talking to them. And I'm just wondering, that sounds kind of silly, but like, how would you suggest like starting the conversation? Just like the
Like literal functional. Yeah, yeah, I get
literal
that.
functional starting the conversation, because I think that that can be actually the biggest, that can sometimes be like one of the biggest barriers. Is just like it's a hard conversation. And so like how do we get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first of all, even like pre-reaching out to the school, it might require some real thought, preparation, and maybe even role playing, like with a partner, family member, best friend. Like I'm a big fan of like writing things down, right? Like maybe I want to like make a list of these are the points I want to make, or these are the questions I have for them. This is really what I want to convey. Then when it comes down, so I had sort of like my preparation, my list, my outline or agenda. It may be worth it, depending, I mean, you might wanna clean it up from your own notes, but, like, sending that to the teacher and saying that, "I have this, like, little agenda, I'm wondering if we can find a time to talk." Maybe ideally it's in person, but if you're immunocompromised and that doesn't work or you're not feeling well, it's like "Can we set up a Zoom session? Can we get on the phone?" So I think finding the right format that feels good to you, and it might be about you having support with you. So if you're partnered, going you and your partner, or if you're a single parent, having a parent, best friend, someone with you as like moral support, if you're feeling like you need that, even just to have another set of ears to take notes, that's really helpful. Um, and I think your each school has maybe a slightly different culture or way, like best way of course communicating with them. I know it seems like email isn't really that's a pretty common form, but it could even just be if it's very typical, like at pickup or something, just to make a comment of like, "Hey, I've got something I want to talk to you about. What's the best way for me to schedule a meeting?" Maybe it's that way.
Thank
Speaking
you.
of email, I'm just gonna follow up. It also, is nice after the meeting for you to sort of send a follow-up email about these are the things we discussed, just so that's sort of in writing and, just so that everyone's on the same page. So I think that's an important part too. I'm always a big fan of, like, closing the circle.
Thanks so much, Carissa. I don't see any more questions. I just put a few things in the chat. We have an upcoming 6-week virtual support group that's coming up. It's a cohort group, and so I put the link to sign up for that in the chat. And also, please complete the feedback form for today's webinar. We would love, love, love to know what worked, you would like to see more of, as well as any suggestions for future webinars for next year. Thank you, thank you. And then I think we have a last question that just came in here.
Yeah.
Um, which is, my daughter is 4 and goes to preschool. I shared with her teachers about my diagnosis and would like to give them an idea of how to respond to questions she might ask them about mommy when she sees them, she's at school. Either a toolbox of words we use at home that she already knows, or deflecting it to, we'll write that question down or ask mommy and daddy later. My daughter doesn't know that I have stage 4 cancer. She just knows that sometimes I don't feel good and that I've had a few surgeries. Also, I love the idea of an agenda. Any resources out there for that?
Lot there. Yes, all good stuff. Um, I would say, first of all, I think it's helpful to the school staff at that meeting to validate and go, if my kid has questions and you don't know the answer, that's okay. I don't expect you to be an expert on cancer. So it's always okay to tell my kid, that's a great question. I don't know. Maybe you should ask your mom or dad about that. So that's always, I think it's helpful to give teachers and school staff that permission to be like, I'm not expecting you to be the encyclopedia and the know all be all of cancer. With that being said, I'm happy to like share some books that I found really helpful or some guides that I have found really helpful. I'd really love if the school had these in their library or in their resources. So if you have specific books that you have found to be helpful for your daughter, like send that to the teacher and to the school. If you or your support team has the ability to like donate those books, great, because then they're just there for a resource for other kids. Bright Spot Network has a ton of guides about sort of answering questions on how to talk to kids. So it might be just sending them links to those guides, being like, I found these helpful, please take these. So I think that could be really great to be able to share that with your school to empower them to be able to sort of navigate some of these situations, not only with your child, but other kids in a similar situation. And then regarding the agenda, I'm not aware of any specific agenda, though that sounds like a fun resource that we could develop. Um, but feel free to reach out if you have any other specific questions about that.
Okay, I think we have one last question. Can you please talk about how to talk to a preteen about metastatic stage 4 and starting clinical trials? Do we continue sharing as it continues to spread?
Mm. Yeah, those are hard conversations. And number one, I always say, you know your kids the best and your family the best, and there's no right or wrong here. With that being said, at that age, like preteen teens, they can be pretty insightful and they're picking up on a lot. So I would encourage honesty. I mean, they're probably picking up on like your changes and going to the doctor more often or you being more tired. It might be the time to just be a little bit more open and say, right now, this is my diagnosis. This is what the plan is right now. And we plan on doing that, as long as possible. I mean, the goal, talk about like what the goal is, right? What is the goal of treatment or not treatment at this point? Like right now, the doctors are just really trying to keep me comfortable, or, we're going to try this clinical trial. We're going to see how that goes. I'm really going to I'm going to keep working and finding different treatments, medicines, approaches that not only extend my life, but help me to feel good. Because really, what's most important to me is being able to be with you and have quality time with you. So I think keeping that sort of that goal in mind to talk to the kids about and being open to questions. I think they need to know that they can come to you and be honest and have big questions and that you'll be honest with them. So, letting them know, actually directly saying, you might have some really great questions. I'd invite you to ask me anything. I'm willing to be honest with you and answer what questions I can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll do my best to look it up or we can go to our doctor together. Um, Kind of make it a little bit more collaborative. I would also say there are some kids that kind of don't want to know. So I'm coming at this from like a, be open, be honest, but I know of kids that say, I kind of just want to know the bare minimum and then it's too much. And then I'm going to be worrying about it and thinking about it. So can you just give me the big updates? And that's also okay because you don't need to feel as a parent that you have to tell your kid everything. So if your kid is one of those that just kind of goes, I'm living day to day, just give me the big updates, then follow that wish and just give them the big important things that they need to know, which really will come back to like, how does it affect them? Because kids are pretty egocentric and a lot of times that's okay. That's developmentally where they're at. Like they're like, how is your cancer affecting my day-to-day life and what I need to know or how that might change my schedule? I will say that we have a lot of great resources on our website. A lot of them are geared towards younger children, but they still might be helpful about how to parent when you're looking at an advanced or stage 4 cancer diagnosis.
Thanks so much, Carissa. This was
Yeah.
awesome. And yeah, and thanks everybody for attending today. And just another plug to complete the feedback form and to reach out if you have additional questions about parenting with cancer or talking to your kids' schools. We are happy to answer.
Thanks, everyone.